So I boiled this talk down to 5 things that led me down this path from Mike's got a new book and he's all excited and that's all he wants to talk about to incorporating it into my sort of thinking and teaching. And as a lot of the books I've read and a lot of things I learned, my first reaction is this is a retread, it's superficial, there's not a lot to it, but it's kind of cool. And then you get below the surface, and the deeper you get, the more superficial it becomes. Whereas what I've found with Toyota Kata is it's the opposite. At first it sounds a little bit strange, and then the deeper you get into it, the more it starts to make sense, and you start to think about many things in your own life in these terms. So 5 things that led me. Number 1, it was consistent with the Toyota message of learning by trying in an uncertain world. And nobody in Toyota ever said to me, what the Toyota way is about is learning by trying in an uncertain world. But that's what they're doing. As an example, Fujio Cho, I interviewed him for the Toyota way. He at the time was president of Toyota Motor Company. He had been the first president of the Georgetown, Kentucky plant. He's an icon within Toyota. Bill was started out at that plant, and I'm sure knew him, and everybody who worked there seems to revere this guy, and their whole life is imprinted by Fujio Cho. Anyway, he said there are many things one doesn't understand, and therefore we tell them just go ahead and take action, try to do something. You realize how little you know, and you face your own failures and redo it again. And the second trial, you realize another mistake or another thing you didn't like, so we have to redo it once again. So by constant improvement or the improvement based on action, one can rise to the higher level of practice and knowledge. So to me, this summarizes what we're talking about with Toyota Kata. And often you'll hear the Toyota people listen to debates about, is this the right way to use Kanban? Is this the right way to use value stream mapping? And it just doesn't, they pull their hair out. It just makes no sense to them to have these kinds of debates. And their reaction at some point is like, listen patiently. At some point they lose their patience and they say, just do something. Just try something. And what they're saying is not anything that you can try is equally good, but until you try something, you don't have a baseline for learning. You don't have a baseline for coaching. You don't have a baseline for feedback. And then Kichiro Toyota, I wrote a chapter in an encyclopedia of Asian entrepreneurs and got more deeply into learning about Kichiro Toyota, who's probably the least known of the Toyota family members who influenced the company. He started Toyota Motor Company. And he was working with his dad, Seikichi Toyota, on developing the looms, and he was behind a lot of the turning Seikichi Toyota's great ideas into practice. And he said something happened that impressed me very much during the testing of 200 looms. This is the last stages when they're just trying to get the automatic shuttle system to work, and then they were going to have a fully automated loom. And we tested 200 looms, and I came up with various suggestions, and Father tried every single one. Humans come up with a surprising number of useless ideas. When you actually try them out, the ones you thought were good ideas sometimes prove to be unexpectedly useless, and the ones you thought were bad ideas sometimes turn out unexpectedly good. This is the principle that practice is number 1. Again, perfect quote for this idea of navigating through uncertainty toward a challenge. And obviously, if you try 200 things and you have a lot of failures, and he's saying that a lot of these ideas turned out to be unexpectedly useless, you have to be willing to accept the fact that you have a lot of useless ideas that you think are great ideas until you test them. That requires that you set your ego aside, which people like Kichiro Toyota and Seikichi Toyota were able to do. They were scientists in the true sense that it wasn't about them. It wasn't about their ego. It was about what they could learn. Okay, the second thing is, so I wrote this book, and then something funny happened. I was giving a seminar at U of M, and this is a seminar that's set up where they pick somebody to speak who's written something, an article or book, and then they pick other academics from other parts of the university to critique what you talk about in your speech, who read the book. They'll actually read a whole book just so that they can comment on the book and on your work. And they picked a psychologist, a cognitive psychologist, who was Asian, an Asian woman who studied Asian American differences. At the first, though, I was wondering, why would they pick a psychologist to read my book? She won't know anything about lean. She doesn't know anything about Toyota. What could she possibly say? And they picked someone else to also comment on it. But Fiona Lee, this Asian woman, young assistant professor, she said what she found interesting in the Toyota way was the fact that American companies were having trouble doing it. They were having trouble learning from Toyota. And I had a lot of examples of that to illustrate that it isn't easy and it isn't natural for most companies. And she said, I think I know why. So I'm thinking to myself, all right, this academic, young academic with almost no real-world experience is going to tell me something useful about why these American manufacturers can't adopt the Toyota way or learn from lean. And she said, and she describes this experiment, which sounded even more crazy, which is she has a carpet. This is what she showed. This is her slide. Imagine this grid, and in each of these cells, there's either a buzzer or not a buzzer, and you touch it by stepping on it. If you step on a buzzer, it buzzes, and a light goes on. And if there's no buzzer there, nothing happens. And then she puts a carpet over it, so you don't know where the cells are that are live. And then she asks you, you're at one side of the carpet, and she asks you to get to the other side. That's the experiment. And what she finds is that there was a very strong Asian Western difference. And she tried Koreans and Chinese and Japanese and Americans and Germans, and they were all students at the University of Michigan. What she discovered was that the Americans would take a step and nothing happened, feel good. Take another step, a buzzer goes off. Then they try to analyze what happened and why and what the pattern was. And then they'd take another step, another buzzer, and then they'd stop and they'd think some more. And they'd go more and more slowly. And she said that some of the people got to the point where they'd be halfway across the carpet and they literally would be frozen and wouldn't be willing to take another step because they couldn't figure out the pattern. And they apparently hated the uncertainty. And then she said what the Asians would do is they would look at it and they would just walk across. And then they'd look back and then they'd walk back and they'd do it again, and now they knew where to walk. And her conclusion was that Americans are not comfortable with uncertainty, that they want to know. And she said that's what I think the problem is with the Americans who are trying to learn from Toyota, is that the Toyota system is based on dealing with uncertainty, trying things. And the Americans want to know. They want to plan. They want a process they could follow that will guarantee they will get to the destination. So anyway, by the end, I'm blown away by this, because suddenly I realized this woman's making sense. She's talking about buzzers and carpets, and this actually makes sense. So that happened that one day. I absolutely did not expect to learn anything from this session. I was doing it because I was asked. It was voluntary. I said, what the heck? Okay, so this is then that evening I get home, and I was finishing up the Toyota Way field book with David Meier, a colleague of Bill's. They work together at Toyota, and he sends me this handwritten document with this diagram handwritten, and he says, Jeff, I don't know where this fits in the book, but we need to fit it someplace in the book. This is a story from when I worked at Toyota, and he told me the story about working for his sensei. There was always Japanese. He was a group leader, and everybody had a Japanese teacher, a coach, whose main job was to teach them, sent over by Toyota to America from Japan for different periods of time to teach them on a daily basis. And his teacher, he was in the plastics department, and they were having a lot of trouble just getting bumpers out. And his teacher kept on asking him when he was going to do his Kaizen, his daily Kaizen. And David said, tomorrow, I'll get to it. And finally, his teacher went into a room and drew this picture. He said, Dave-san, you are here. I know you have a lot of problems, but until you take the first step, you won't be able to see the next step. You can only see this far. So some days there'll be a big improvement, some days a little improvement. Every day take a little up. Please try and do your best. And Dave's reaction apparently was, thank you, can I go back to work now? And it was about 3 years later when he was consulting after he left Toyota that this suddenly hit him when he was trying to teach somebody else. This was important, and he finally got the message. But anyway, you need to include this story. This is the same day as Fiona Lee gives me that feedback. So I incorporated both of these into the last chapter of the field book, but I thought it was amazing that both these things happened the same day. The third thing was the frustration of people jumping to solutions. And these are slides, again, from David, his short list of what frustrated him about trying to teach what he learned about problem solving at Toyota. Problem solving, I guess, is what you might call the improvement kata. And one of them is not understanding the needs of why you're working on what you're working on. What is the biggest problem? How are you going to solve it in a way that will benefit the organization? Knowing the answer prior to exploration. If you already know how to solve a problem, you don't need problem solving. Another big mistake. People think they know. And then finally, the number one chap, jumping from problem to solution without first working to acquire an understanding. So again, you can see why the kata idea connected with me through this learning that I had been going through over many years. It also fit the leadership model. Gary Convis and I were developing, again, I was finishing the book when I learned about this, and we said first, as leader, you have to develop yourself. And what you're going to develop yourself to learn is PDCA. It's a problem, in Toyota terms, a problem-solving process. And until you understand how to do Kaizen, how to face a challenge, how to use Kaizen to meet the challenge through step-by-step improvement, until you understand that mindset of uncertainty, then you can't teach anybody else. And there are people looking to you who are taking cues from you. So you have to, so Toyota, when they teach, as they go overseas, as they've been spread the Toyota way, they always start from the top, and then the top become the teachers of the next level down. So that's training the trainer, and a lot of companies do that, but training the trainer happens in a few days. And when Toyota introduced Toyota Business Practices, which is their version of the improvement kata, to get to the group leader and team leader level took 8 years. So it's a different level of dedication to developing people and understanding the importance of practice. The top levels had to do an 8-month project with coaching and then learn it. Then they became the coaches, and then they learned it some more, and then they became the coaches again, and they were learning some more. So they're continually learning for 8 years. And then eventually you can get to Hoshin Kanri, which is nested value stream improvement in the kata term, where you see the top sees the whole value stream, and then you can get to the bottom and see people working on processes that are giving benefits and aligning with the vision at the very top. Finally, my passion outside of Lean and Toyota has been learning classical guitar and learning to play golf. I started to learn to play golf because my son was interested when he was about 4 years old, and he got better than me pretty quickly. And he began teaching me when he was about 12 years old because he had a naturally good swing and I had a naturally really bad swing. And then he says, so Dad, what are you working on? And it's like, okay, Jesse, I'm hitting golf balls. That's why we're here. He says, oh, good. What are you working on? I said, well, I'm trying to hit golf balls and practice. Oh, what are you practicing? Hitting golf balls. So how's that going for you? I said, well, some are going straight, some aren't, but I think seem to be hitting more straight. And he says, oh, really? Why? Why are the ones that are not going well? Do you know why? And I said, well, I seem to be slicing. And he said, well, do you know what causes a slice? And what I was doing is going across like this. So he saw a deficiency, and then he called that the drill. And he said, first I was just a partial swing, and he called that the drill. And then he would say, just try to swing without moving anything except your arms, and hinge your wrist. And anyway, then I would do the drill for like 10 times, and then he would go back to hitting balls, and then I would go back to swinging incorrectly, and then he would turn around and say, Dad, do the drill. So that was coaching, and that's actually pretty good coaching. Corrective feedback, individualized to me. So anyway, the result of all this has been that I've been able to relate what I've learned about Toyota Kata very directly to what I learned from Toyota and what I've written about the Toyota way, and I think they fit hand in glove. I think the Kata is operationalizing, putting into a practical methodology of teaching and developing what the Toyota way was trying to say in terms of ideas and concepts and principles. And it's been very useful for me in my teaching and trying to go from the theory to the practice. Thank you.